Okay, we're back on the record.
Wildlife Management Committee would like to recognize Tim White, Agency Migratory Game Bird Coordinator, to give us a report about the 2012 dove season.
Thank you, Commissioner Teague.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. We'll just get started on our TWRA Public Dove Field Program. I wanted to give a little update on that. Mourning doves, as many of you probably know, is one of the most widely abundant birds, game birds in North America. 39 of the 48 lower states harvest or have dove seasons, and it's harvested more than all other migratory bird species combined. In Tennessee last year, about 35,000 hunters harvested about 300,000 mourning doves. Dove harvest regulations are established by management units, similar to the way the flyways are based on migratory pathways. And doves, for the most part, stay within their unit boundaries. Tennessee exists within the Eastern Management Unit. There's 27 states. 19 of the 27 states are hunting states for doves. Our current season framework is up to 70 days. It used to be 70 days and 12 birds, or 60 days and 15 birds. About 5 years ago, we went with a standard 70-day and 15-bird season that kind of gave all states the same season, which allows us to monitor things a little better. When some states had differing bags and seasons from others, it was difficult to monitor declines. So by all the states having the same season, it makes it a little bit easier to monitor. We also have the second largest regional dove populations with long-term stable trends. A lot of the other management units are seeing declines in dove numbers. The thing about doves, they're habitat generalists, and it confounds our ability to do any meaningful habitat management. It doesn't mean habitat's not important, but given our limited resources, we pretty much focus on dove populations. A lot of different factors affect dove populations, from severe weathers or changes in habitat, but harvest and resulting harvest rates are the only factors we have control over. And therefore, harvest management is pretty much dove management. There's not very much population management that goes on. It's pretty much harvest management. Unlike waterfowl, which we can provide habitat for migrating birds, doves are, again, so general that pretty much we pretty much provide hunting opportunities. Again, that meaning harvest management. So, in 2001 through 2003, a national strategic plan was developed and approved by all four flyway councils. The reason this was done, the Fish and Wildlife Service came to us and said, we see a decline in the dove call count herd. There's two components to the dove call count survey. And they said that if you don't come up with a strategic plan for managing doves, we're going to do it for you. And because we see a decline in dove populations, that's going to mean severe restrictions in bag limits and harvests. So all the states got together and started working on a strategic plan. We got to looking at the data and found quite a few different data sets that showed dove numbers weren't declining. The only one we saw declining was dove call count herd. And on the dove call count dove seen, we record doves heard and doves seen on this particular survey. It's one of the main dove surveys. The dove seen was stable or increasing, and what it was telling us is that there's a lot more noise pollution now than there were 30 years ago. These are the same routes we've been running for 30 years. Tennessee, we have about 20 routes, and every year, once in the spring, we'll run this route, and that gives us a picture over time. And what we're seeing is a tremendous amount of growth, a lot more noise pollution. It's a lot harder to hear doves than it used to be. But because we were able to look at Christmas bird counts, breeding bird surveys, call count seen, and all these other data sources say doves were stable or increasing in our management unit, we developed our own Eastern Management Unit harvest strategy. And the strategy, because again, we were able to produce it, a lot of times the Fish and Wildlife Service is a little more knee-jerk. They're a little more strict, a little more harsh in the way they deal with things. Our plan calls for to see a 3-year decline. You have to see 3 years in a row of decline to trigger these bag limit reductions and decreases. We don't want 1 year to affect it. Typically, anytime you do an experiment or set a season, you don't really know anything unless it's at least 3 years worth of data to look at, because 1 year doesn't really tell you a lot. It can, again, be an aberrant season. Things can change. So anyway, we have a national strategic plan. We have call count survey, herd, scene, American breeding bird survey, Audubon Christmas survey. Different states do roadside surveys. We do breeding season banding. We're required to do parts collection surveys, and all of these data are important. They're used in the harvest strategy in determining our seasons and bag limits. And again, we currently have the option of a 70-day season with 15 birds. And if our populations see a substantial increase in survival rates, et cetera, over a 3-year average, then there's a provision that will allow us to go to 18 birds today from 15. But we're a long way from that right now. Those populations are not anywhere near that level. Right now, again, it's fairly flat. We're fairly well maintaining what we have, but not really a big increase or decrease in the population's trends. And again, a decrease over a 3-year period would also trigger a reduction in bag limits. So, in the late 80s, we began a leasing program, leasing dove fields to provide hunting opportunities, and we also provided dove fields on our management areas. In 2001, we approved a plan that increased our annual lease budget from $20,000 to $80,000. At the time, we were leasing, as I think the last year before we increased our rates in our new program, we had 11 leased fields. So that's not very many. But after 2001, we increased the budget to $80,000. We tried several new types of fields. We had one called an improved silage field, where we would lease a standard cut silage field, but we would lease that before the farmer cut it, and we'd pay him to leave an extra 4 acres of corn in the field that he would mow, which is legal. You can manipulate a crop any way you like for doves. And we also have what's called a spring lease field, where we pay the farmer to plant a field specifically for dove hunting in the spring, and it's managed accordingly and provided, for hunting in the fall. But what we saw was that the harvest rate, the kill per hunter, was no different on these two new fields as it was on this traditional fall lease field. What we figure is basically the way our fall lease fields work is we go out and we search for fields, and we typically look for fields with doves already on them. And so most of the time when we're leasing a fall lease field, we're seeing doves on it. We know that there's a good chance of being successful. With the spring lease, you would think it would always be good, but it's not necessarily the case. And the improved silage field, again, it showed no difference in harvest per hunter. And so we phased out the improved silage field. We still offer the spring lease field as an option, but it's not something that we advertise. We have a few fields that we've traditionally done the spring lease on that have been successful, and we keep doing those. And again, we have it as an option if it comes up as a really good, say, sunflower field, or somebody's willing to sell us cheap. But the cost on those fields is pretty expensive. Again, we're at the point of diminishing returns on our spring lease. At the spring lease fields cost $225 per acre for up to 25 acres. The standard prescription for wildlife managers is 1 to 2 hunters per acre. A lot of times we get 3 or 4 hunters per acre. But at $225 per acre, even if you get 3 hunters on it, that's $75 a hunter we're paying to provide a dove hunting, and a license is less than 30. So it's really not, we don't do it to make a profit, but we're not making any money at all on our lease program currently, for the most part. Now, again, on the spring leased fields, let me say the spring leased fields are not very economical. Again, some of them are successful, and we keep those as an option. Now, the two options we go with are the traditional fall lease and the spring lease. The fall lease is we pay up to $75 an acre for up to 40 acres. If we get 3 hunters an acre, that's costing us $25 a hunter. That's about break even. So the traditional fall lease field, considering that it's probably as good a success rate as any of the other fields, and it's probably the cheapest that we offer, that's probably our best bang for the buck. And as you see, for a 25-acre field for a spring lease, we pay $5,600 for it. In 2011, the average hunter, Tennessee hunter, harvested approximately 6.8 doves per trip, went on about 2 dove hunting trips, which is about 14 doves per season. And last year was a bad year. Looking at our long-term average, the number of hunters was down some. The number of doves harvested was down. A number of trips was down over the previous year. Our public dove fields by region, I've got combined leased and WMA fields for 2011 and 2012. The light green is 2011 and the dark blue is 2012. As you can see, combined leased and WMA fields, we had a pretty substantial increase over Region 1 and Region 2. Region 3 and 4 were similar to the numbers of acres that they leased and provided in the 2011. Wasn't much increase or decrease, really. We had a big jump on Region 1 on WMA fields. They were able to get out there and get a lot more fields in. Made a big effort this year to try to increase the number of fields, and they had a pretty big jump in their WMA fields, as well as their lease fields. Region 2 had an increase. Region 3 and 4 had a slight decrease, but they're still providing quite a bit of opportunity, doing a great job out there. And so again, Region 4 this year had 12 lease fields, and even though they were down a little bit, that was still leader in the clubhouse statewide. So our folks are doing a really good job. They've really kicked it up the past year and increased the number of fields that we're providing. With that, I would be glad to entertain any questions or answer any questions I can.
Tim, I was very fortunate. Major Ripley took me out the afternoon opening day to 3 fields. 2 WMAs, and I guess 1 brine that was privately leased. And I'm awfully proud of this agency, but I couldn't have been prouder that day, particularly on the WMA fields. And I think it's probably reflective of what many of us saw across the state. The WMA fields, it was amazing the pride our folks took and how they had planted them, how they tested it, and it showed. I mean, the doves were there, the people were there, and the kids were there. And I compliment you. I compliment every region staff. I appreciate Region 4 for putting up with me that day. And I guess the thing that I also was reminded of that I had forgotten, or I probably took for granted, but while we were over at Forks of the River, Brian gets a call. One of our officers had been shot in the face. Peppered pretty hard. He's fine. But our folks face that. In fact, the guy's so dedicated, the next night he's doing Boomsday. But I really was proud of the agency. And it's not just my perception. I got an email, I guess, a couple days after that opening weekend from someone who could afford to hunt probably anywhere they wanted to, quite frankly. And they were at Forks of the River, and they just raved about the conditions. So my compliments to you and all the regional staff. You all represented us very, very well.
Well, thank you. I think of course, the biggest share of that goes to the regions. They're the ones out there getting their hands dirty and working hard. And they do take a lot of pride in their dove fields and providing that opportunity. And one last point I forgot to make was our budget was raised to $100,000 for dove fields about 5 years ago, I believe. And in a lot of years, it's difficult to spend that money. You allocate it by region. People are to hold on to it as late as they can, trying to lease fields. But this year, we were really able to make an effort to cooperate. When someone had some money that they weren't going to be able to spend, we shifted it, and we've spent almost every dime of the $100,000 that we have this year. And I think last year we only spent about $75,000, but this year we spent all 100, and maybe hopefully next year we can spend all 100 again, and maybe we can come back to you and ask you for more. So hopefully, if it works. Hope I didn't speak out of turn there.
Any more questions? Audience? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
That concludes the business of the Wildlife Management Committee. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee recognizes Brian Ripley, who's going to be speaking of our efforts at a recent gathering. I have been assured that this is rated PG. Is that the case, Mr. Ripley? Thank you, Major.
get,
We had a technical difficulty early.
because there's some videos in there, we had to put it in a certain way.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Cannon, Director. Okay. Where's the next one here? Something, how we're going to organize this presentation, I put it together, is I wanted to give you a brief overview of what the Rainbow Family Gathering Circle of Light is, and actually how we had or developed an operational plan for that, and then close the presentation with a summary on what we did as well, and possibly things that we learned, things as an agency we may want to consider in the future, and some takeaways that hopefully some of our coworkers and the commission may take away from this presentation. Typically, this organization is, and we'll go over it several times, and because it's something that you need to put to memory. They're an organized organization without a leader, and it's kind of an offshoot of the early counterculture movement from the late '60s and early '70s. They're quite an eclectic gathering, and that's just one small part of it. When we first heard of this, some of our employees and some of the people in the community weren't exactly what the Rainbow Family Gathering was. They wasn't sure whether it was a conglomeration of trout fishermen or My Pretty Pony enthusiasts or a political movement. They weren't quite sure exactly what that was. Fortunately, most of us had some encounter one way or the other with this group on different parts of the Cherokee National Forest. This picture here that you're looking at actually is the culmination of the major week of that event. Generally, they will start coming in about a month before in smaller groups, preparing the area, erecting sites, and then they meet. Where do I pause this? Okay. What we've got here is an interesting group. And I guess the best way to describe them will be to use their own description on their unofficial webpage. And I'll read from that. And it says, the annual Rainbow Family Gathering is celebrated during the first week of July, 1st through the 7th, and is hosted in a different national forest within the United States. Since 1972, there have been gatherings, and in high years, the mass of the family can exceed 30,000 souls, and has also enjoyed the energy, much of the same as few as 7,000 belly buttons in attendance. These rather large, free-form gatherings are attended by a broad and diverse spectrum of people. Although the hippie movement has a large appeal to the media, the truth is that you can meet most everyone from almost everywhere at a gathering. The celebration is commercial-free, and there's absolutely no charge to attend a Rainbow Family Gathering. Now, some of you may be familiar with some activities out in the western part of the country on BLM land. There's an event similar to this called, I've just thought, Burning Man. And it's more of a commercial event than the Rainbow Family. And it's something to remember here as well that this group or this gathering also attracts doctors, lawyers. They come with their own physicians. They set up medical camps. If you'll look there on this map that they prepared and place there in the venue themselves, it'll show different camps. It'll show different kitchens. It'll show where the infirmary is. They have their own in-house security, if you will. Tim may elaborate on some of that later. And you'll also notice a camp listed there on the bottom. That means the alcohol camp. That's the camp where alcohol is allowed. And for an unorganized or organized, unled group, they were pretty smart in that typically they place their A camp and their bus village closer to the road. That those folks will interact more regularly with law enforcement And basically, LE will leave the rest of the encampment alone because they're busy dealing with the A camp and the bus village. This is the general area, an overview of where we were. This is South Holston Reservoir. If you look, you'll see where the South Holston Dam is, bus village along the Flatwoods Road, and the Little Oak Campground, which was a site that we used as the forward command post. This is where TEMA was located. The Forest Service was there, as was the Sullivan County Sheriff's Department. Now you can imagine that size of area, and if you can make out the road there where the bus village is, that's where all the parking occurred. And this was single file, one side of the road parking for just under 7,000 people. So you can imagine how far they parked. And these, most of the attendees were not afraid to walk. So that was an easy thing for them. This was a map that was prepared and generally edited on a regular basis by the Forest Service, in that they've had well, since '72, a learning curve there to work this event. It being a leaderless, organized event, there was no one person to apply for or accept or be denied a permit for the event. So the people just show up, in camp, and leave. It's interesting that the Forest Service actually has worked on a memorandum of agreement with this leaderless group for many years, and it's kind of ironic that you have a leaderless group that would organize a memorandum of understanding or agreement, but it's never finalized. So each year they're working on it, and that occurs in their family council each day, where everyone in the group has a right to speak, and everyone has to listen, and they're handed the turkey feather, and they say their piece, and then everyone else has to be quiet and listen. As again, they are leaderless, and they are led or make decisions based on consensus. So for anything to occur, they all have to agree on something. Now you can imagine 7,000 people agreeing on anything. This is one of the modes of transportation that many of them arrived in. And this was located in the bus village, which is right on the Flatwoods Road. If I'm not mistaken, this was one of the rare times that we actually had a major Forest Service roadway that transected the event, and it was also adjacent to a major reservoir. And that's where our nexus was in that event. So this will give you an overview. This is from our aircraft, and actually the camera used is from a state-issue iPhone. Kudos to the IT people. And you can see the road there in the center left. That is where everyone was parking. To the right would be the reservoir. And we're flying at about 3,800 feet. There is Bus Village. And the water area there is, for lack of the term that was used during the event for our personnel, that was Bus Bay. So we knew where we were talking about if we needed to. Also, if you noticed a little bit earlier, one of our patrol boats was out toward the mouth of Bus Bay working that event. Let me get this out of the way here. Again, the Forest Service uses a formula they've developed over the years to estimate their attendance. Again, the Forest Service estimated around 6,600 to 6,700 attendees. Some of the local governments estimated that number was greater. The formula the Forest Service uses based on the number of occupants per vehicle that they would count every day, and the number of buses that arrive, and they assign a number to those folks that would arrive in the bus. And again, this is, the folks will begin arriving through the course of about 3 weeks. They do not announce where the annual Rainbow Family Gathering Circle of Light will be until about 26 days before that event. It's kind of like a Grateful Dead concert. The word spreads and people show up. And the event reaches a crescendo on July 4th at noon, where they have a children's parade into the major event or the major venue area, and then have a ceremony praying for world peace and harmony, which is a worthy cause, no doubt. Put this in especially for the commission. This one actually is on a harness, and we should be able to control this one a little bit better. As you can see, the proximity to a major population, you have a lot of folks that would come and participate, a lot of curious people that just want to visit. I think one of the most interesting encounters that I recall from that event was the Sheriff's Department was working a roadblock, and there were a group of young men from the local community. Were in a 3/4 ton off-road truck loaded in the back of the bed, and they were riding up there to see just what was going on. And the deputy sheriff said, "Well, where are you going?" "We're going to go in there and see what's going on." He said, "Not today, you're not, because you may go in there and bite off more than you can chew." So it was managed by some really good folks from all sides. Here's Flatwoods Road. As you can see, the Forest Service required each of these the participants to park on only one side. The rule was that they had to keep the tires off of the gravel because it was important for safety reasons that have a public access in case there's emergency. If you recall, the July of this year was very hot and very dry, and the potential for fire was certainly great. And the only way that those folks could safely be in there is to maintain access. You'll notice that the tow truck there was pulling a vehicle up that wasn't properly parked, and I think the operators of those businesses in the community did quite well during that period. In fact, we got several calls at our office of where we towed their vehicles to, and we would report that to individuals. Know it's the Forest Service. Here's the number to call. Here's the record. They'll get you set up and get you back on your way. Seeing that this was kind of a return to nature event, electronic communications was discouraged, and frankly, they didn't need it. They were quite successful by setting up their own communications. There were centralized areas, and the trading area where they would gather and trade goods with each other would also have message boards. Which kitchen was feeding what each night, and what was going on, and all the neat things that were going, when the family council would meet again, and so forth. And there were also political announcements to one degree or the other there as well. But you can understand the scope of the groups that were there. This is actually you'll notice this is a little bit better prepared sign. This was actually prepared by the Forest Service in a way to better communicate with the participants in the event. That if they put up a standard government-looking sign and printed it that way, it would probably just be torn down, thrown away, set on fire, or whatnot. But if they would do it this way, then folks were more likely to read it. At this time, I'm going to turn the operational portion over to Captain Tim Sain, and he has a better detailed view of what went on day to day there.
I'm gonna try to go back one slide. Just on this sign here to make sure that we're on the same page. The Forest Service didn't physically create this sign. I think there's some adaptation from the RAP of 107, which is the way this group indoctrinated people into the group as they showed up. They had all this stuff printed and posted around their operations. I just didn't want to leave the Forest Service hanging out there. Our operations, obviously, June the 12th was an interesting day for several people in our agency. We get this call from law enforcement channels of this group called the Rainbows coming in. Our district, or our old area, up and down the whole eastern part of the state, the Eastern Grand Division, has dealt with the Rainbows before. This wasn't, the Rainbows themselves were not new to us, but having the national event was very new. It's the first time it's been in Tennessee. Our normal rainbow gathering is maybe 50 to, on good years at a regional gathering, it's probably 250. So it really caught us off guard that we were selected for the national one. And the history behind that is it tends to be a little bit different for this group to have a national event in the southeast compared to out on the left coast. There seems to be more tolerance as you go west in the United States for this group than compared to the southeast. So this caught us off guard, took us a little bit to speed up. The first day or so, a lot of phone calling, and I think the interesting point to point out here is on June the 12th, we get notified. There were already 50 rainbows at this site. 2 days later, we get our first complaint call from a local marina on panhandling and vagrants on the property. So bam, bam, real quick. We started into our reactionary gap as we found out this national event, while the Rainbows knew when it was happening, nobody else knew until that June 11th and 12th whenever they put it and advertised it. So we had a lot of spin up to get on. Fortunately, U.S. Forest Service, our wonderful partners on the Cherokee, had already pre-staged their law enforcement leadership command team. And fortunately in Unicoi, they were actually thinking it was going to go on north of Tennessee, but they staged them there, pre-staged them, and they actually dedicate 2 people year-round that follow this group, and then they bring in additional specialized people to work this group. So they were already on the ground. They immediately, once the site was located, sent people out to perform water quality and start backcountry patrolling and seeing what's there to try to look at their property before, during, and after. As we react as an agency and things start moving forward, our first request comes in as the Forest Service is bringing in 30 additional law enforcement officers for their incident team. We were asked to start working and help with maintaining their road structures, our road openings, keeping the thoroughfare, and also providing enforcement of presence. They only have 4 local LEOs throughout that upper part of the state to work. So we, of course, provided that assistance. I think it's important to note here that our fisheries folks, especially Bart Carter with the program manager there for fisheries for Region 4, stepped up to the plate and went in and put boots on the ground there to look at our water quality issues and stream flow issues. How are these people getting water in and out? Even though the Forest Service was doing this daily, it was good to have Bart go in. We also started pre-staging, due to the fire season, some actions that might be needed in case there's a forest fire. So we brought in the very large John boat that Fisheries has. The easy way to get people in and out of here is by boats. So that worked out well for us. By June the 14th, there were already 200 rainbows present. And as Brian stated earlier, by July the 4th, that's the crescendo, that's the peak day at noon. Every day exponentially just kept increasing. I think we've got another video here.
Bring you back toward the bank a little bit.
I've lost it.
Yeah. Bring you back toward the bank a little bit.
Let me get rid of that sound. This is actually shot from the movies that we carry. I've got mine on from these little cameras that are on us while we're doing enforcement actions. And if you notice here, let me play it again here. You've got beach toys and people. And these are rainbows coming in. They're utilizing the resource. There's a few boats on out from this. This is just one of the points coming around Josiah Creek or Bus Bay. And it just, depending on the temperature and the day, what's going on that day and what's been advertised on their community announcements is how much people we had in the water. And as we go through this, you'll see our additional involvement. we had to develop an action plan to make sure that we accomplished the roles that the agency wanted us to accomplish. So Major Ripley, John Gregory, Darren Ryder, Steve Patrick, they basically all came up with our action plan, which clearly stated our mission, and we implemented it. It's about as simple as you can get. District 42 was designated as the command and control structure for this event, and due to us already working with the Forest Service, even though this was a TEMA sanctioned event, being that TEMA was activated and on site, the agency thought it was best that we attach ourselves to the U.S. Forest Service. So that's where we went to and operated out of their incident command, which helped us resolve a tremendous amount of ongoing issues very quickly. I think we got another video here. Again, this is another view of kind of coming around on a different day. Sometimes, and this is fortunate for this, our movies don't have a lot of detail, but if you can kind of see back through, there's more people going all the way down. There's actually issues that we had to deal with in this picture, such as nudity in the water. So it was challenging. As we move forward, kind of showing you how we operated, this gives you a little bit more detail. We had daily briefings just like any other operation where you got a lot of folks involved morning and evening. The good way that our action plan came together is after these briefings and after each day deployment that we did, we had after action reports that came in and went throughout the whole chain of command. So everybody in the agency was aware in our chain of command of what we were doing daily as it occurred. Basically, we decided on June the 27th we would go more active instead of just fulfilling roles of request from Forest Service and our normal activities. We ran active June 27th through July 6th with 4-man teams. There's 4 teams, four officers on each team, involved our whole district. And obviously this was a rough time of the year with everything else our district had going on. Our primary roles and operations plan was clearly stated into water safety patrols, including shoreline activities, and land patrols when requested and approved. And basically those land patrols were by vehicle, and we did go on site on foot twice. And on site is where we were actually inside the venue, across the lake, across the water, up inside Traders Village, in and out of the kitchens. We'll see some more on that. Here's some pictures that kind of depict our officers inside the venue. Most of our concerns dealt with public indecency or nudity from the water and shoreline avenue. On many occasions, we would approach the coves and our presence would cause the officers, or cause the people, just our officers being there, would cause the people to put their clothes back on. Or fortunately for us, they actually followed verbal direction pretty well. Very limited non-compliance issues as it related to that. We also dealt with people swimming too far out or impeding boat traffic. As the days got longer and warmer, beach toys were found by these individuals. They were able to use them. Sometimes once a beach toy goes so far out, it's not a beach toy anymore, it's a vessel. So we had a lot of issues to start dealing with. There's a large increase in boat traffic in these coves, whether they're with the boaters either interacting with rainbows or just coming out to see what was going on. We had a tremendous increase in just, I wouldn't say locals, because that just infers people right around Bristol or Sullivan County. Virginia, North Carolina, we had people that would tow boats that would normally go to other lakes, towing them there to come see this and experience it. We had abandoned boat issues that 4 or 5 days later, people would finally come back out and pick their boats up. So it would just kept snowballing. Inside the event area, whenever we were there, primarily we just wanted to, even though the Forest Service law enforcement was in the event every day, we saw our mission and our roles and our action plan called for us to be waterside and shoreline, more where the public safety issue was. But we did get reports about things going on, and as Brian has already pointed out, this group is leaderless, and trying to get information out of this group is very near impossible. So we had reports and were able to document illegal turkey kills. fresh shootings, shootings being target practicing, different avenues going on, fresh shot shells. So violations were occurring inside the event with wildlife-related issues. It's just trying to catch them. I don't see how we could have done it any different. I think we got another boating video. Yeah, this one, we've got some other officers coming in. This shows a little bit busier day. They're coming back around Josiah. Point out there around Josiah Branch. You notice the people. What's actually going on, there's 3 officers in the boat from the officer you're viewing, and you'll see it here in a second. It shows you the swimmer issue that we would have, and they finally got him going back to shore. So they'd have to stay with him till he got back. We had one day we were busy helping the Forest Service with some road-related issues, and actually had a call of a nude male that swam on out from Bus Bay or Josiah Creek out to the first island, and was swimming from the island. Then he thought he could make it to the dam, and actually had a boater call in saying there's a nude male swimming towards the dam, and luckily EMS got there before we did. So EMS was able to get him taken care of. The bad thing about that is we were trying to meet with EMS to take care of the issue. They took him back toward shore, and as soon as he hit the shore, he took off running. So he was back in the rainbows. So we never got to identify the guy. It gets better. Here's some of our operation summaries, and I just want to kind of go over that our district officers really rose to the occasion on this. Very proud of those ladies and gentlemen in our district. They acted very professionally. This was a trying time, as we all are aware, for our agency as a whole. 4th of July holiday weekend's a busy time. They were able not only to do what we requested of them, but they excelled in that, and also were able to meet the needs that needed to be done for the other lakes and waterways. We had boating accidents during this time frame. We came out of this and go into fatality boat accidents. So they really rose to the occasion. Very proud of those individuals. So a couple of things to kind of point out towards the bottom of this slide. We had complaints basically from marinas, and this was an impact that we didn't think would happen. You know, we would think, and we got a lot of support from Sullivan County Sheriff's Department on solving marina issues from the nudity side or just panhandling side, but the marinas also turned towards us. We're there every day. We dock boats there. They're very good to us. So we have this issue, and one of the issues that were going on that kind of disturbed a lot of folks is these certain parts of this group would go into marinas and get the people in the store of the marina kind of occupied, while the other 3 would steal stuff. And so we tried to help out where we could there. And then they would also, you know, they were hot just like anybody else, but they would go swimming and be in and around a marina, but swimming just with undergarments on. So you would have females get up with white undergarments on and walk through the marina. And it would really upset a lot of the people that are there. So we dealt with a lot of issues that we just were not used to dealing with from marina standpoints. The meth lab situations, we were intimately familiar with that over the last several years in our neck of the woods, so to speak. And fortunately, the Forest Service had people on board for that, so that was just relaying information. And on top of all this, directly, for those that are familiar with South Holston Lake, if you put your back on Bus Bay and looked out to the lake, they had a wonderful fireworks display over the 4th of July holiday weekend, which really ramped up their crowd too, because they prohibit fireworks. So they were really upset. And part of that was they thought the government may have done that for them. And then we had another funny one that went on involving the government issue. This group was very sensitive over government issues, and the Forest Service goes in there right before the 4th of July week to have another council meeting with them, and one of the Forest Service rangers comes out and tells us they're lying. And he said, we were all asking what was going on. He said, well, he said the NYPD's here and they're flying their helicopter over. Well, as it turns out, they were true. Edwards Air and Associates there in Piney Flats is one of the leading helicopter repair places, and they actually had some NYPD helicopters in, getting them repaired. They wanted to go up there and see what was going on, so it's a short helicopter flight. They just flew that helicopter. And I've actually got pictures of the helicopter flying over from the rainbows. So the group was an interesting group, but it did tax us. I don't know, Brian, if you want to hit this with me, or as we get into the next gathering, I kind of labeled this slide, and I'll probably end up turning this last one or two over to Brian, but I just want y'all to keep in mind, this next gathering may be the Rainbow family, or it may be another group, because one thing that we have seen firsthand, and we know now from the Forest Service is what do we call it? We call it an echo effect. We'll have an echo effect from this point on South Holston Lake from this. And we were very touchy about giving this presentation because we already deal in enforcement situations sometimes with group mentalities. But it's really bothersome if you take this group of 7,000 to 10,000 folks and they're not able to get a permit or required to get a permit. And from a lot of public's perception, they got special treatment. From ours, they didn't. But how do we start dealing with this group? And I think it's time for you to take over.
There are several things I wanted to bring up about this in the summary, and then go over some takeaway issues. But I think what we saw from this is the ability that our agency has, not just in the enforcement in Region 4, but you can just about pick any section of our agency and any region of our agency, is our ability to work well with other agencies and departments, regardless of what that event is. And this just exemplified that. Something that we probably should be thinking about as well, as Tim mentioned, was permitting issues, and we may want to start thinking how we might have to address this on our own properties. Not that our properties are set up for this, but if 2,500 people show up at a WMA and plop out, what are we going to do? It would probably behoove us to develop at least a few contingencies to see exactly what we may have to do with that. And certainly, how would you handle a group of that size? And again, we've had these gatherings before. We expect an echo effect. The Forest Service has advised us that certainly will happen. Not to the extent of what the National Gathering Circle of Light was, but possibly a smaller semicircle of light. So let's think about some takeaways here. One thing, I think it's important that, and over the years we all have seen this, the role of our wildlife officers is subject to change, and it's changed dramatically in the 30 years that I've worked. I remember learning a phrase when I was first in Carter County that said fin, feather, or fur. And basically, when you stopped a vehicle on the National Forest, you told the occupants that you were looking for fin, feather, or fur. And if we would found a dead body in the trunk, we were to let that go, and unless it was a deer or a squirrel or a turkey. And the expectations of the public and really our requirements as law enforcement officers in the state have changed dramatically over time, not because we've wanted them to, but the change in society. And this event also really pointed out the need for our use of technology in our law enforcement and to maintain current in that technology. I was surprised at the quality of the camera work with the phone. Discounting the camera holder, but the quality of that image was amazing, and I know that that's something that IT is working on, equipping our field personnel with smartphones. I think it's great, and we just need to stay on top of that. Another important thing was to establish clear protocols for our personnel to work in, and establishing those protocols with the use of field supervision, regional personnel, Nashville staff, the executive director's office. This wasn't done in a vacuum. It was done with everyone's input, real-time input, to come up with how we were going to interact with this group and how we were going to work. And when we got everybody there, there was a buy-in, and nobody was surprised at all. And I think it was essential that the guys, the boots on the ground, kept Tim briefed, they kept me briefed, I kept John briefed, and Steve Patrick briefed, and the director briefed, and Darren, and everybody knew what was going on shortly after it happened. And I think that gave everybody a comfort level with what we were doing, because certainly we were stepping out of, in some instances, our traditional role. The other issue is back to the interagency cooperation and intra-agency cooperation. All it took was a phone call to request assistance from BART to provide some additional watercraft for possible use. Not that we had to use it, but we thought that if we needed to, we wanted it 6 miles away rather than 46 miles away. And it was phenomenal. I can't speak enough about how well we work together in Region 4. It's really great. And what we also saw here is being involved with other organizations. And by that I mean the day-to-day work that we do with other agencies, not just natural resource agencies, but other federal law enforcement agencies, other state agencies and local agencies. And that while we were getting briefings on a daily basis and a debrief at the end of each day, those briefings were open to everyone, essentially. And there was a lot of information that could be conveyed in those briefings that was law enforcement sensitive. And the only way you get that is by a special agent with the FBI or somebody from the JTTF that we've worked with in the past, to either get you off to the side or call you on the phone and say, hey, this issue's here, just to make sure you're aware of it so your guys know what's going on. And had we not developed those partnerships already, I don't think our people in the field would have had that type of situational awareness that they would have required. And it's again, Tim bragged on his folks, and rightly so, and I want to brag on Tim, and the guys did an exceptional job in a very difficult time. 4th of July weekend, Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July weekend, Labor Day weekend, one of the 3 busiest weekends in the summer, and these guys, men and women, sucked it up, did what they had to do, and did it professionally, and I think represented the agency exceptionally well. And I'll entertain any questions if you have any.
Major, Tim, thank you. I was thinking, I don't think they teach this in school or at the academy, but then it kind of hit me, Bart's in this too, and I don't think they teach this in the fisheries program either. So just, but hats off to y'all, did a remarkable job, and used remarkable restraint. Are there any questions from the commission?
Obviously, I live in Bristol, so I saw some better pictures than what you had presented today, but quite a few, in fact. But how much environmental impact did it have? I know they said they had a group came in and built these, military-grade latrines, and then there was a group that stayed after for several weeks that supposedly cleaned it up, and they said it was in better shape than it was before. I just wondered what y'all's opinion of that was.
Well, most of the stuff that they built, they took down. Well, they took it all down. As far as I know, the water quality surveys from the latrines, there haven't been any huge bacterial counts.
Runoffers. I mean, there was rumors that at Bus Cove that there was all kinds of bacterial problems, and there was people saying they weren't going to swim in the lake, and I'm talking about the public around the area.
I think one thing, Commissioner, we have to convey to you is the last time that I have personally had a conversation with the biological and with the Forest Service was about July the 15th, and at that point in time, there was not issues with water quality. Now, we'd have to check with them, but they have the data and the monitoring of it. Now, one thing our officers saw firsthand being on the ground were some of these wildlife openings, like where you see the pictures of the whole group. That was prime brooding area for turkeys, and it's just dirt. It's dirt right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, their concept is we're not going to hurt the environment. I mean, that's what it was all about. But you don't put 7,000 people in the woods and not hurt the environment. Right. Is what my thoughts were. So I thought the damage was minimal from what it could have been. So I do think y'all did a great job. But one thing I will say, if you'd have left me alone, I'd have made it that swim to the dam. Okay.
Nat, Mr. Johnson, You missed another opportunity to set up license sales.
Thank you all.
Nap, no, you didn't. Are there any other questions from commission? Any questions from the public? Folks, thank you so much. I think this is going to be a fact of life periodically for the near future, and y'all did a tremendous job, so thank you so much. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, can I say just one thing? I had the opportunity to go up and work with the guys a day or so there. They're understating how much that they did and how much they were involved. I've got a letter from the Forest Service that I should have brought down to read, but it was a glowing report of what our people did and how they couldn't have really operated without them. And I totally believe that. They did an astounding job of putting it all together. You know, you got boat accidents happening, you got fatalities, you got injuries, you got the regular boat traffic, you got all the fishing that's going on, you have nuisance bears, and all those other things that are going on, and they did it. The whole region came together. I don't know how they did it, but they did it, and they did it in the same professional way that they always do. So I may be out of place saying this here, but I don't want to cut that off, but I guess that was the end of the presentation. I just want to make those remarks. I'm just really, really proud of our people. But I might make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, that the remaining part of the agenda, if it would be okay with you all, you consider maybe rolling those things until tomorrow, just in the interest of time for the rest of this afternoon. But that's certainly up to discretion of the commission on what you feel like your time limits are.
In light of the fact that we've got that meeting tomorrow, that we've already invited people to come at a certain time, do you not think it'd be better to finish today, or however y'all feel? But I hate for people to come rolling in here and start piling in at 10 o'clock and we're being late.
I don't think tomorrow will take very long.
Okay. I don't care, I'm just.
It's strictly up to you all. Just,
All right then.
As usual, Commissioner McMillan voted down.
I'm going to the Rainbow Family, I'm telling you.
You want us to, let's just go ahead and do this budget expansion. Is that what you want to do, get it over with? Or roll it till tomorrow? Got two things. Roll it, okay.
These are obviously the people that are not staying for the meeting tomorrow, correct?
All right, we will, then the last two items on the agenda, the Budget Committee and Real Estate Report from Gordon Martin. We will carry those over till tomorrow. And is anything else to be taken? I know you've got some information about an event after a while, but if there's nothing else to be discussed at this time, the meeting will be adjourned till 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.